Needing to make this video. I'm hoping that it reaches out to Michaela, my sister. Um, I hope that this is going to be very informative. In fact, I know that it will. I don't know what the conditions, and this is about my biological father, okay, and whoever else can. Uh, I'm going to say this because I believe that in fact, I know that they went after or believe. I think there's a very good chance, what I'm going to say, that they were going after my biological father, and it was the gay community. This is what happened. I talked about this in my other video, and I took pictures of it. When I was 20 years old, my father passed away, and I talked about all the things that had happened, and at this moment in time, I don't think I had gotten a car yet. I might have, but I think I may have visited Jillian. But anyway, Jillian's 14 years old, and we're living at these apartment complexes. Once my dad died, I had to pack up my things and I had to leave. And I don't know who it was, but I'm starting to think that it wasn't my biological mother. It was her twins. But some psychologist ordered my mother to do this, or her twins to do this. But Julian, he got sent over to an apartment complex. I had an aunt that used to live there for like a couple months or something like that. But it's right across the street from Jimmy Porter Park. I believe it's called Jimmy Porter Park, right across the street from where I used to DJ with Michael Rossiter, and they still to this day have a bunch of DJ park parties where Chris Martinez, Eric Quintero. It's those apartments right across the street, right next door. It's right behind a laundromat and right behind a liquor store or a beer store. It's right next to Herrera's. Julian and Frankie know about this. One of the best favorite restaurants my dad used to like and we used to go to, especially Julian. He went there more than I did. Was a restaurant called Herrera's, and I don't know if they're still in business anymore. But they used to have one, and Julian knows what I'm talking about. This video goes to Julian as well. Um, Well, Julian got sent. I'm going to post some pictures of it on my Instagram, this account that I made specially for my mother and my immediate family, and whoever else, Michaela, that can have access to it, and that's for you as well. Um, what happened was Julian got sent to this apartment because he had nowhere to live. My mom basically abandoned him, was the story. Julian's friend Oscar, his mother, I know it sounds crazy. His mother, he needed a roommate, and Oscar's mother moved in with him, and it was a two-bedroom apartment. And I think talked about this. I know I've talked to this story about, but I don't know if I made a full video on it. I'll make some drawings about it. And when I was at this apartment complex, I needed a place to live. And I called Julian, and he said that, yeah, mom just rented she like signed a lease. And I don't know if I think she was co-signer. And she just basically abandoned Julian. Julian was going to middle school, and he was 14 years old. And he lived at that apartment for about 3 months, to my understanding. I know that he was there for at least 2 months. But I want to say he lived a total there for about 3 to 4 months. No more than 3 to 4 months. And I called Julie, and he said, yeah, I got a place. Why don't you come over? If you need a place to sleep, you can sleep on the floor in my room. I said, great, that's perfect. So I go to his apartment. I'm still working at Standard Register. I think I was still working a temporary, or I was about to be permanent, or I just gotten a permanent position. I don't think I was working on, because I had to work 6 months in order to be permanent. But anyway, I'm working at Standard Register. My father had passed away, and it was, I don't know, I don't know how many months after it was when my father passed away. But you could probably get the records, the property records, and find out all this information. Well, Julian and her were living there. Julian told me when he walked in a few times while he was living there, he opened the door and he got sort of nervous and freaked out because he said that his Oscar's mom was shooting up dope. He said he saw her shooting up heroin and doing drugs. And she was I when I showed up there, I would only show up on work because at the time I wasn't working Friday, Saturday, and Sunday yet. I was working Monday through Friday, and I got off work. And she eventually, after about, I stayed there for about a month or about 3 weeks. And when I was there, she eventually brought, about 2 weeks later, me staying there, she brought her daughters, which one was blind, and one of the little girls was like 9 years old or 10 years old, was blind, and the other little girl would help her. And I talked about that there was this short Mexican guy that came in, and he told me, and he just came inside the apartment. I didn't even welcome him in. I had no idea because I had seen Oscar's mom walk in and out of the apartment a lot of late hours through the day. She was like a drug addict. She was sometimes bringing random guys, and what happened was, is she looked like she was bringing these guys from like Harry Hines over in Boulevard, over in Dallas, Texas, which is like the ghettos and prostitutes and drug addicts. I mean, it's a real rough, bad place. And there were several different guys that showed up. I'm gonna say it was more than one different guy that showed up. Um, but I recall this guy that showed up, and he sort of knocked on the door, and I opened the door, and he told me that he was looking for Oscar's mom. I don't remember her name, and I said, well, she's not here right now. Will you tell her that she better give me my money, or I'm gonna rape her little daughters? And I swear this is what he told me. And I sort of drew him into a cornering area, and there was knives. And because this guy, I didn't know at the time, I knew I could probably take this guy, I could overpower him. And I sort of draw him away so his back was facing toward the girls, and I was letting him in a situation, letting him know that he wasn't gonna touch the girls. He was gonna have to go through me, and as long as I was there, there was nothing like that was gonna happen. And we could sense that. He could sense that, but he told me, and he pointed over toward the room, and he says, "If she doesn't give me my money, I'm gonna give my money to taking those girls." And he was saying that he was gonna rape them. And I'm not sure if he said he was gonna rape them, like the word rape, but he said that I'm gonna get my money or I'm gonna get my money there. And I knew what he meant. And he pointed over to the girls into the room. Now, when this happened, um, I was trying to get this guy out of the apartment immediately. I was just like, he needs to get the fuck out. I told Julian immediately the same day, and I told um, Oscar, I told Julian to tell Oscar's mom, because I was working through the day and they were in and out of the apartment most of the time, different hours. Julian was there most of the time right after school. He was going to DeWitt Perry. So I think it's important for me to say this because this is going to be the biggest thing that you need to understand, Michaela, and Michaela's mother. This guy that looked like Michaela, this guy looked exactly like my biological father, our biological father. Now, I don't know if you had any connection with him. I don't know if he stayed in your life. I don't know if he was just a stepdad that showed up every once in a while. I don't know what that story is, okay? But what I do know is I remember seeing this guy, and he did look very intense and kind of frightening because she was bringing guys over from like the drug addict place. I know where that area is. I know what kind of people show up there. But she looked like she was a junkie. She was, and just what my brother Julian told me, he says she's a drug junkie. And I was nervous because I thought that maybe someone could molest Julian or somebody could rape him. Julian's 14 years old. Some guy shows up or all these, And Julian eventually threw a party that eventually had my turntables stolen there. And all the equipment that I actually gave to Julian. I gave all this equipment free to Julian at the time that I gave it to him. I gave it to all free, and then he had all his shit stolen by just random people. One day he had a party or something like that. But I wanted to say this because there was a guy that showed up, and he looked exactly like my biological father, the same guy that I saw many years ago. Whenever when I saw him as a little kid, I don't know if he was assigned just to greet me or just to overlook the things. I don't know what the story to this was, but I remember seeing this guy and he looked at me pretty crazy, and I'm like, because the first thing I think is like, I know she's doing drugs. The people she's bringing along is doing drugs. And I don't know what the situation was, but the guy goes into the room, and they didn't have drugs every time, okay? Obviously they're going and getting, fast food and bringing it into the apartment. But on one occasion, this guy looked at me, and he looked at me very intense, and I kind of got nervous, and I'm like, man, is this guy on drugs or what's going on? He could have been cleaning up and trying to scope out the entire environment. I don't know. But what I do know is that when I was inside that apartment, once I told Julian, I remember this is what I remember very clearly. I told Julian that I was kind of nervous about this guy or some of the guys that were coming over there. I said, there's some different guys. Some of these guys look fucking crazy, like they're on drugs because, they're smoking ice. And ice is a murdering drug. That's something, ice is a drug that people do a lot of the times and murder people with. And whenever I told Julian that I was kind of nervous about this guy, the next day or 2 days later, because I expressed this, I go into Oscar's mom because I wanted to tell her, I think I told her in person, it was when I walked into her room to tell her there was a guy looking for your money. And I don't know if he was, I know that I knocked on her door and opened to tell her this, but when I opened the door and I looked, that same guy was there, and I looked at him. He looked at me like and all he did was this, and he goes like this, and he goes, and he didn't say anything, and he looked tense, but he looked like he was sitting down, like he knew that maybe he had frightened me. But I could be wrong in the ideas that this guy may have just looked a lot like my biological father, and that it may just, or it was, but you're gonna have to do the investigation yourself, Michaela, or whatever it is. But this was my biological father. I swear when I looked at this guy, I remember I felt like the same way that I felt like when I was a kid. When he walked by me, I said, this is my biological father. This is my dad. This is him. I remember the feeling as a little kid that I didn't know who this guy was, but I knew that I was from his cloth. I was from his cloth. I am from you. He may have not been my father, but he was my dad. And like my biological dad. And so I wanted to make this video and make sure that, please, Michaela, look into this. Julian told me that he spoke to the guy a couple of times, and he told Julian didn't seem like he was too nervous about him. He seemed pretty chill. He wasn't nervous. He was like, no, it's just that guy over there. I don't know. And he said that guy, or Oscar's mom said that guy had been to prison before, or he went to prison for a little while. So I want to talk about this because Julian may have met my biological father and never even know it. I don't know if my biological father was maybe just not wanting to invade or say anything just because he knows that I was close to my father, and him just kind of make everything safe and comforting is whatever he can do and the little things that he can do. So I want to make another video on this and continue speaking about this story, Michaela. Please watch these videos. These videos are strictly for your mother and Michaela and the story behind what's going on. I'm 39 years old. In a month, I'm 40 years old.